Sure. So I think that the market kind of split. The townhouse and single family market went bananas in the summer and fall. And the condo, what we would probably consider like the first time home buyer, bread and butter, studio, 1 bedroom condo market kind of just if that place wasn't perfect, had outdoor space or a place to put a home office, it was not going to sell. We also do a significant amount of rental business, and the rental market completely stalled. We are not seeing the amount of renters relocating to the district. So that has definitely, I think, impacted the studio 1 bedroom market, where landlords would have been putting it on for rent, but now are selling. So we're actually, the most recent stats where we're at a 5-year inventory high for condos, whereas the inventory for single families and townhomes has been going like this. So it's kind of like a tale of two markets. We have like them kind of diverging.
Are you seeing the same thing, James?
Basically along those lines. When you look at the absorption rates, so what's available on the market and what's actually going under contract, what is interesting is that if you look at the condos in DC, September and August, they actually had the same number of contracts for condos under $1 million. I believe it was like 499. But what happened was the inventory of available condos jumped up. I think it went up like 200 condos were available in September that weren't available in August. So it's not so much that the condo market is dropping in my book, it's that there's just a lot more inventory and a lot more choice. So as Lindsay was saying, you gotta be perfect, you gotta have outdoor space. Those are the ones that we're seeing go under contract. But if you look, the numbers are kind of flat for the condos.
Nadia, anything to add?
No, I think just to go back to the original part of your question, in the spring, I don't think anybody knew what was really happening. I think there was a lot of uncertainty. We were trying to figure out how we were going to do business in the pandemic, how we could do it safely, protect ourselves, our clients. And, it was a little bit of uncertainty, and markets hate uncertainty, but it smoothed out relatively quickly. And by the summer, we had delayed our spring market, and it came back with a vengeance.
And so what does that mean for the fall market? I mean, maybe you guys could talk a little bit about what the fall market typically feels like and looks like versus what you're anticipating and what you're experiencing right now this fall. Nadia, if you want to just continue with that.
Sure. I think, there used to be, and I don't think there is so much anymore, a seasonality to real estate in the DMV. And that was, you had a super hot, busy, high volume, high activity spring market. So March, April, May, June. Then the curve would come down a little bit slow in late July and August. And then it would burst again after Labor Day until you got, towards the end of October, where things would quiet down again for the holidays. But I think that seasonality has really become less and less of a factor in our market, even before COVID to a degree, because we've been dealing with an extended multi-year period of inadequate amounts of inventory. And so I find that buyers are in the market longer and they're looking year round. I listed a house 2 weeks before Christmas and still got multiple offers. So that seasonality has been, I think, mitigated by the fact that people are staying active in the market longer because it's taking longer to find the house and win the house that they want. And then with COVID, seasonality is out the window. August was one of the busiest months ever. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2021. We'll still be dealing with the pandemic. A lot of people still will not be back in their offices, but I think we're now in a rhythm where we're getting used to it. And so that those seasonal cycles may come back a bit, but I still think you're going to have busy times year round just because of inventory challenges.
Cliff, I'm interested to know what you're seeing since you're on the Eastern Shore, which is typically considered a second home or a weekend home market for Washington. But I've heard anecdotally from talking to agents, including you at one point during the pandemic, that there are DC buyers who are now looking for primary residences in your neck of the woods, and maybe more DC buyers who are looking for second homes, places to escape their primary home. So I'm curious, what have the last several months been like out where you are, Cliff?
I think we went back to January and February. I believe the assumption by most realtors on Eastern Shore was we were going to be in for a real bad go. That, things were going to be probably as bad as they were during the recession. It turns out that it was completely different from that. We've been getting clients from Washington, Northern Virginia, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York. Probably New York would be second to Washington. Our sales and our company are up about 200% over last year, which is just amazing. On the rental side, there are no rentals available, zero. And we're in a county, we have 600 miles of waterfront, which is the most of any county in the continental United States. So waterfront homes historically have been something people would rent for vacation rentals or maybe for a month or two just to find out if they wanted to be here. Everyone within a 2-week period, every rental was taken. We had one lady from New York that just all her requirements was 4-bedroom home with a pool and a dock. She paid $50,000 a month for 2 months. So our market has benefited probably more from the pandemic than anything that I've seen in 37 years being in the business.
Wow. And of course, the other thing that we have going on right now are like historically low interest rates, which I know are bringing a lot of buyers out of the woodwork. So Rob, that's your territory. So what are things like for a lender?
Yeah, that's my specialty, and I can address a fair amount of these other questions too. We're seeing historic record volume as a mortgage industry as a whole. Better yet, as just our company, just coming off our record month as a company, going to be followed up by another record month. It's obvious with interest rates near or at all-time historical lows that a lot of the real estate market that James and everyone else on this panel and all my real estate partners that I work with are seeing, a lot of it is a result of interest rates being so low. Affordability is higher. You can buy more house with interest rates low. And we're not really expecting to see that change much through 22, even 23 at this point. One thing we're seeing a major uptick in is the second home market as well. On the shore where you are, Cliff, we have branches where I'm at right now, Charlotte, North Carolina. I am out of DC, but I'm in Charlotte today. And we've got even down through the Carolinas into our Tampa office. We're seeing lots of people buy second homes in Florida, in the Maryland, DC region, which Washingtonian Magazine, why not talk about that? We're seeing a lot in the Deep Creek Lake, Maryland area, Lake Ann in Virginia, Smith Mountain Lake. So we're seeing all these different hot pockets where a lot of my repeat clients are calling back, and they are absolutely buying second homes at record levels. I would say corporately, if we're not up 100% on the year, I'd be shocked. I don't have the exact stat, but with interest rates so low, investment properties, refinancing in general, literally, if you haven't refinanced your home, you're probably living under a rock because there is when you're looking for free money during a pandemic, that's one place to look. So
I'm curious, Rob, is there like a rule of thumb for when it's worth refinancing? I mean, if you think you've got a pretty good rate, like, is there a certain number of points?
Yeah, I think if you just jump on Google and type it in, someone's going to say if you save 1%, it makes sense. So if you're going from 4% to 3%, the only way you lose money in that case is if you don't refinance, right? That's what I've told clients. And the good part about that is if the numbers speak for themselves. You don't have to sell anything. It's just show them how much you save and how quickly you break even. So I'd say rule of thumb is 1%, but in a high cost area like DC, we have people with $1 million plus jumbo financing. If they're saving 0.5% rate, it really makes sense. So.
How have you all seen your clients' preferences change throughout the pandemic? In terms of, Lindsay already touched on this a little bit, talking about the condo market and the tiny 1-bedroom places sitting for a while. So what are people asking for? What are people wanting right now?
Definitely homeschool space, a home office space, outdoor space. Really, a Peloton room. I mean, it's like anything that you can like do to make your house, your gym, your school, your office, your house has become your everything in a sense. And like we live in such an amazing city that there's so many amenities that we took for granted. And when they all get shut down, you realize, oh no, I need to bring all of these things to my house now.
Very true. Homeschooling big time. So that's, I live in Ashburn, Virginia. And so I'm not in the city, but the suburbs out in Loudoun County, and all of our neighbors are walking their dogs at the same exact time. And I think it's to get out of the house so they don't have to teach. So.
Yeah, I noticed that too when I'm walking my 2 dogs. It's like the whole neighborhood's on the same schedule.
Yep, that's it.
James, what about you? What are you hearing from your clients in terms of what they're after these days?
So in line with what Lindsay's saying, one thing that I thought was very interesting, especially, I work with a lot of dinks, dual income, no children. They want, not only do they want a separate space where they can work from home, but they have to be far apart from each other. Because when both parties are in a den, like on their Zoom calls, they can hear each other, and when things start getting heated up. So I thought that was one thing that was very interesting. We want to be on separate floors, or it's got to have a separate bonus room that's like downstairs or in the front of the house if I'm going to be working from the back. And yards. Like before, people didn't want to take care of yards. We don't want too much yard, and now it's like, give me as much yard as possible.
So the things that you're all saying make me think suburbs. So is this like a booming time for the burbs and not a great time?
Oh yeah. Like Silver Spring, I feel like every house has like 40 offers on it. It's bananas.
Yeah. This is the shining moment for suburbs. There was after the last Great Recession, there was a flocking back to the cities, and now it feels like we're reversing that. And the number one thing is space. And, and if you have a house with a pool, now's a great time to sell it because you're going to get top dollar. Everybody wants that home to be everything that they can't get outside of the home right now. So yeah, suburbs offer that, but it doesn't preclude houses in DC that are in the more suburban neighborhoods of DC. For example, I just listed a house on Friday and had many offers, and, it's still in the city, but it's got a little bit more of a suburban feel to it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to affordability. Like obviously the really beautiful single families and townhomes that offer those amenities in the city are going to sell. It's just there are people who were originally looking for a $750,000 condo, and they're rethinking that decision now, where they're like, maybe I'll go to Hyattsville, maybe I'll go to Silver Spring, maybe I'll go to Falls Church, so they're starting to push their boundaries a little bit more. And I think people are thinking long term. I'm curious, is this going to be something they buy into long term after COVID isn't a concern? So I guess we'll see. Maybe we'll see a flock back to the cities. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, Lindsay. Have you had any, not that you guys aren't giving great advice and trying to, counsel your clients as wisely as possible, but have you had any clients make decisions during the pandemic that you think, wow, you guys are going to regret this next year?
I have had clients pull away from buying a home now because we've now had, 8-9 months of, I don't know what month it is anymore, of living in the pandemic. And a lot of my clients basically bugged out of DC. If they had a vacation home, they went there. If they had family in another state, they went and stayed with family. And it has given many of them, or some of them, a different perspective and made them rethink whether DC is really where they want to put down roots. So I've had some clients just say, now is not the time. I don't think I want to commit to something yet because I may want to shift my lifestyle. I think you're finding a lot of younger professionals who maybe have been renting and were thinking about buying in the foreseeable future. If they're working remotely, maybe they've gone home to their parents and now they're saving money for a down payment. And I do think that segment of the market is going to come back when things settle down. I think the city is always going to be a big draw. I do feel like it's temporary. And I would say to people who are thinking about buying a condo eventually, that maybe now's the time to be contrarian and buy it when everybody else isn't.
I agree with you because I feel like right now sellers are willing to negotiate more on price and closing cost assistance. And if you're using one of the down payment assistance programs like HPAP, a seller is really desperate for an offer on a 1-bedroom or a studio condo. So you're not going to be stuck in that rat race of multiple offers, which could be a great opportunity to just get into something without having that competitive craziness. So if you're planning
and get that great rate.
yeah, exactly. And if you're planning on staying long term, 5 years to 6, 7, and you're able to rent the condo when you move, I think it's a win.
I also have clients that are they're watching the condo market and they're buying them up for future rentals, knowing that they're not going to be able to rent it out right away. But now is a great time to get a deal on a condo. So they're building up their portfolio for whenever we have a vaccine and we're back to normal.
Huh. What about the row house market, which is a little bit in between the two markets we've talked about, the suburbs and the condos? So like a DC row house, what kind of traction do those kind of listings get these days?
Still very strong, because if you think about a buyer who's coming from a 1 or 2 bedroom condo, what I'm seeing is that those buyers are accelerating. They may have thought they could live in the condo for 5 years, maybe with a small child, and then move into a row house uptown. They're accelerating that because now with the interest rates, they can afford it and they need the space if they're both working from home and they have children at home. So that market, because of slightly better affordability in parts of the city, is definitely moving fast, multiple offers, same deal. And a lot of row houses do have outdoor space and backyards and so forth. So they check a lot of boxes for families who need more space.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and with a lot of these multiple offers we're seeing where people are moving out of the city and going out to the burbs or just trying to buy up to have more space, going from that condo to that single family for every reason that Lindsay said earlier, the Peloton, the homeschooling, the home gym, everything you need. We're seeing a ton of bridge loans at a rate that we've never seen in my 20 years of doing this in the DC metro area. Because when you have multiple offers, you have 10 people looking at a house. If you're that listing agent and a great offer comes through and it's contingent upon the sale of their existing home, you're probably, it's at the bottom of the pile, right? You have 5 other offers that are not contingent. So if that offer is a strong offer, at Intercoastal, we've been doing a ton of bridge financing for buyers that want to make a strong offer and haven't decided whether they're going to rent their existing home or move out and sell that. So we have to educate them on ways to be more competitive. So I think it's extremely important.
Rob, I actually have a question for you, if that's okay.
Sure.
Would you suggest a home equity line over a bridge loan, like in that scenario?
If you already have an equity line established, potentially, but if you are in the midst of listing your current home.
Yeah, no, it can't currently be listed.
Yeah. So if anyone goes to obtain through traditional home equity line routes with some of these local credit unions, the first thing they're going to ask you is how quickly you plan on selling your home. And the clients always say, I'm about to sell my home, and they get denied immediately for a home equity line. Well, what a bridge loan is it is a home equity line. That's what it's for, right? So you could go through the process with a company like us to do the home equity line or bridge loan, as you want to call it. But we also help on the bridge purchase acquisition side because a lot of clients going the traditional route, Lindsay, of a home equity line, they can't qualify debt to income ratio wise to carry their existing home plus the new bridge loan, plus the new equity line, plus the new home, where we tailor specify the loan where they don't have to qualify counting their exiting primary residence against them. So there's some cases where, yes, a home equity line might make more sense, but they don't qualify for it. So they have to use a bridge loan in a special formula. So
my advice on the home equity line front was as soon as COVID hit, I got one just as an emergency fund that I never tapped, but you might as well have it. So I encourage that for everybody. Great to have it.
It is.
And if you are lucky enough to be able to withstand the ratios and have both an equity line and a mortgage on your first residence and be able to still buy another house without selling first, please don't wait until you're making an offer to then say, I'm going to go get an equity line to give you the down payment. The seller's not going to love that. They're going to think it's going to take time and you may or may not get it. And then essentially the offer is contingent on you getting it. So if you're thinking about it and you can carry all that debt and you've got the good ratios, do it now. Don't wait until you found the house.
And same with a bridge loan, right, Rob? Because in order to secure a bridge loan, you have to get an appraisal on your current home. And my understanding is that appraisers are going nuts right now because everyone's refinancing.
That's true. And you kind of all made good points there. To go obtain an equity line right now will take you 60 to 90 days. And I work with all the local credit unions to help people do that, where we don't facilitate those ourselves. But on a bridge loan, we just closed one in 18 days. So we can do a bridge loan quickly. And if you did wait and you needed to work quickly, we can do that. So another advantage to doing a bridge loan versus a true equity line.
So I'm curious, are your clients saying outright that they don't anticipate ever going back to a physical office even after the pandemic? Maybe this is a good one for Cliff, since you're dealing with people who are willing to live much further afield, than typical DC.
The answer to that is yes. And going back just a bit, you had asked what people were looking for. What we're finding is that buyers are coming here and they're looking for a family compound large enough to accommodate the children, the parents, grandparents, and they want, which is very unusual, almost every offer in the higher price properties are asking for fully furnished. These people want the amenities that will make the children happy, which obviously a pool is a big thing, a dock, and as someone mentioned earlier, space that they can separate families, whether maybe it's a main house and 2 guest houses, or a main house that has first, second, third floor. But these are more larger estates, and people just seem to have stepped over a threshold and are doing it willingly, saying that I'm going to make this commitment, and there's a good chance I'm not going to go back to the city. There's a good chance I'm never going to go back to the office. And so that has been, we've not seen that before since I've been in business.
Wow. What about the DC area agents? James, are you hearing the same thing from your clients, that they don't anticipate ever the remote work ever ending?
No, it's been changing this whole time, right? Because when we started, everybody was told, okay, be ready by Labor Day. We're going to be going back in. And obviously it's Labor Day and we're not back in yet. I just spoke to some clients today. They said when they go back, it'll be 1 or 2 times a week. And some people will have rotating schedules. I have some clients who won't have to go back until, well, they will have to go back, but not until like the virus is completely gone because of health concerns and things like that. So they're getting, special exceptions and things like that. But I think, most people are thinking that they will eventually go back, at least for some part of the work week.
I actually think we're going to go back. I think humans aren't meant to be isolated, and I think people miss being in a collegial office environment at least part of the week. So I think some of the people who maybe have left to go far afield, they may end up coming back into the city and maybe buying a pied-à-terre in the city so they can still live on the Eastern Shore, for example, but still come into the city 2 or 3 days a week if they have the means to do that. Because I just don't think forever, but I think I have a lot of clients who have been told not to expect to be back in their offices until 2nd or 3rd quarter next year. So, moods and temperaments over these things can change over time. And I think eventually we're going to say, you know what, I really like being around my colleagues and I want to have that again. And I think we'll at least see people coming back partially, if not completely eventually, but not anytime.
Actually, building on that, I have some clients that are allowed to go back into their office, once in a while. And if they have had a test recently and things like that, and they love being back in there. They're like, I can get so much more work done there. I'm not focusing at home. I've got too many distractions. I've got the kids, I've got the dogs. And so they're excited to go back. I'm sure that'll change once we're back, but.
And I think the appetite for going back into an office environment, at least partially, maybe not every day, is going to be so much tied to what does happen with the kids in schools and when the schools can, kids can safely be in school full time. I think parents are going to feel like, why do I have to be at home? If I can safely be in the office, I'd rather be in the office. And I think eventually we are going to go back to some semblance of what we had before with obvious modifications and safety measures.
One more question I wanted to ask before we jump into the Q&A portion from our audience. We have an election coming up. I don't know if you guys have heard. Does that affect the market? I mean, is there, I think traditionally there's sometimes a little slowdown before the election. Are you guys feeling that right now?
Oh, yeah. In particular with first-time buyers, we're seeing them just kind of like stall their search and saying, I'm feeling anxious about life and everything, so I'm just going to hang out. And they don't specifically say the election, but I think it's the election.
I haven't seen it yet, but in past election cycles, you'll have this weird quieting down of the market where everyone is sort of collectively holding their breath to see what happens, even if they're not, in government and they're impacted by a change of administration and in fact, but just again, uncertainty has a dampening effect on markets and people just want to know what's happening. I had a listing, beautiful, beautiful home. It was on the market 2 weeks before the election. Nothing happened. 2 days after the election, I had 2 offers. So it's just wanting to know what's next. But this year, it's kind of also being messed with because of COVID and because of the delayed market and because of limited inventory. So even though we're getting closer and closer to the election, I personally have not felt that slowdown. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen in a week or two, but so far it's been full speed ahead. So.
Yeah, I haven't really seen the slowdown from our standpoint, even from our overall corporate numbers in all of our states. When I look at any of our regions that we lend, it's still record breaking across. And again, a lot of lenders, it's very refi focused. We're a purchase shop. We're very focused on purchase business. We always have been. And we're seeing more purchase business than ever. So I can't say that I've seen a direct effect from it from a corporate overview standpoint. And again, I think interest rates are the driving factor in that. So, everything I'm reading is regardless who wins the election, interest rates are predicted to stay low through 2022, even into 2023, based on predictions of slow to no inflation, Fed funds rate and the prime interest rate remaining low. If not, we might see a negative interest rate environment at some point. So, interest rates are going to remain low, and that's going to drive a lot of people's purchasing power. So,
okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
I have to ask the obvious follow-up question, which is, does a Biden win mean something different for the DC market than a Trump win, or does that not really have any effect?
Everybody raise your hand if you get this question about 5 times a day in the month leading up to an election. What happens if there's a change of administration? I think a lot of people think there's this mass influx of new people and this mass exodus of people from the prior administration. The reality is, DC is no longer just a quiet government town. It's a town driven by really robust businesses, education, healthcare. I mean, we're not just the sleepy government town we were 25 years ago. So whatever ripple there is diffused across the market, I think. And then also you think about people who work in government, a lot of them are young professionals, young staffers. They don't make a ton of money. A lot of them are renting and not buying. And a lot of people who work in government don't necessarily lead. The vast majority of government workers are not appointed. They're professional career public servants. And so they're not going anywhere. So I don't see like this massive churn of houses coming on the market and buyers buying them. I think it's more diffused in the general real estate marketplace.
Yeah, we saw it more in the rental market when Obama came into office and when Trump came into office. And it was across all price points rental wise. But I think that if they aren't already in DC, they want to land, kind of get a lay of the land and then figure out where they want to be before making a permanent decision. Because we had people looking at luxury listings and obviously like entry-level staffers looking for a studio. So I feel like if it's a change, then you're going to have just people coming in from outside, and those are the relocators who usually tend to rent.
Yeah. And what's interesting is one odd statistic from when Trump won was that the luxury real estate market had a little bit of a boost.
Yeah, we noticed that.
So many millionaires and billionaires in his cabinets, and they were buying up some of the more expensive estates around town. So that was an interesting little.
They were also renting some of the luxury stuff too. We got a couple of them as clients.
All right, I will move on from that topic.
Thank you.
um, and go to some of our audience questions. We've got a lot of good ones stacked up here. So I know Lindsay mentioned Silver Spring is kind of going nuts right now. This person wants to know, what advice would you give to first-time home buyers who are looking in the Maryland suburbs?
Keep your head up. It is tough out there. It's a mosh pit, and just do your best to make your offer as strong as possible. If you can do an inspection prior to making an offer, do it, because then you can make your offer not contingent on an inspection. If you can work with a local lender who can pre-underwrite your mortgage and make sure that you're fully approved, do that. Do not use Quicken Loans. Really trust your real estate agent, if you have one, about which lenders you should use. Like, we don't get paid for you to use them. We do it out of our love for you getting the house that you want. Other things are just, there's contingencies in the contract. So anything you can remove that you feel comfortable, like we're trying to mitigate that risk for you. We're not going to be like, write this offer so you can lose your deposit. That's not how we roll as real estate agents. Like, we want to make sure we're protecting you, but also we want you to write a competitive offer. Escalation clauses are definitely popular. They put you in a blind auction like eBay. So you put in like your max cap and you go up to certain increments. So there's different strategies and techniques that you can use. I think that's why working with a real estate agent who's experienced in this market is so important, because we actually have a multiple offer worksheet that we go through with our clients, and it has like 35 different factors that go into an offer and how you can make them competitive. So it's not just one thing, it's kind of like the overall package. And then if there's 40 offers, like, you kind of just gamble and you do your best and put it on red.
You're giving me anxiety, Lindsay. 40 offers, a lot.
That's not the norm. Let's just put it out there. This is not an anything goes market where you can just slap any price on a house and it will sell. It won't. Buyers are incredibly well informed and super smart, and the houses that get that kind of response are the ones that price appropriately. And I tell my clients, there's no one price for a house. There's a range, and if you're at the top of the range and you're selling, people are going to have much higher expectations, and they're going to be less willing to fight for that house. But if you're at the lower half of that range and people really see the value, they will get super invested and engaged and willing to go to the mattresses for it.
I agree. And then I also want to add, look at houses that have been on the market for more than a week, because those are opportunities for you to get into something that didn't get the mosh pit activity. So look at things that have been on the market a while and give them a second look.
And I actually just had a conversation about looking at things that have been on the market a while with someone today. And my concern with some of those that have been on the market a while, the only reason a house sits on the market is because it's inappropriately priced. Even a house that needs a ton of work, if it's priced appropriately, it will sell. And when I see a house that's been on the market a while and the seller has not made a price adjustment and it's not getting traction and now it's gone stale, that tells me that that seller is either not informed as to what the true market value of his property is, or is not willing to hear it. So you can certainly make a run at that seller and maybe give him an offer that he's willing to take, but sometimes that is a red flag to me. If I see a house that's been on the market for, more than 30 days or something, which is a lifetime in real estate right now, and they've never made a price adjustment, that tells me something about the seller. And so sellers, you got to still be smart about this. You got to present your house well. It has to be, move-in ready houses are what everybody wants. There's not a lot of people willing to pay you top dollar for something that needs a lot of work. And, they want it to be priced rationally. And if you miss that mark, you better correct really quick.
I agree. But if you even miss it by 10 or 15,000, like, it will sit. And so a seller might be willing to negotiate 10 or 15K off, and it might be worth it to the buyer. So right now we're telling our buyers, throw it against the wall. Let's see if it sticks. If it's been on the market for 2 weeks, let's see what happens. We'll write the offer and we'll why not?
You never know.
Especially with the condo market.
Yeah.
One thing we're seeing a lot, Lindsay mentioned getting pre-approved up front with a local lender. When you do work with a local lender, you know, a lot of times the listing agents will know you. So if you're working with a local lender and they're saying, hey, I've worked with Rob or whoever your lender is before, and we know you're going to get to closing, and they're local and they have control over the process, you're going to have a better chance of also winning that deal versus a few lenders that Lindsay maybe mentioned earlier. And yeah, you know, the other side of that, and something that no one talks about right now, are appraisal waivers through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So when we're running loans through a system right now, if we have a property address and someone's applied with us as a lender, and many lenders can do this, some aren't doing it right, but some don't know how to do it, but we can run a pre-approval through a system, and before my buyer would even go out and make an offer on one of Lindsay's or James's or anyone's listing, we might receive a property inspection waiver to where they don't even need an appraisal. So now you can strike the appraisal contingency, and that could give the seller and buyer confidence in that market. So that's something to consider.
Nice.
Here's a good question. I think it's sort of one of those evergreen questions people always want to know. If you all had to predict one area in the DMV that's on the cusp of blowing up and getting super popular, what would you say? Is there anything left?
We're seeing a lot of interest in Capitol Heights, Maryland lately. I think it just comes down to affordability, and there's a lot of investor activity, and first-time buyers are looking for affordability and something that they don't have to fix. So we're definitely seeing more activity over in that side of PG than we have in the past.
Hyattsville is another one of those areas that's getting a lot of attention. I mean, if this was 2 or 3 years ago, I would say Woodridge in DC, but even that's now getting a little up there. So Petworth is, I mean, I remember 10 years ago, you could buy a completely renovated townhouse, top to bottom, walking distance to Metro in Petworth for $500,000 or $600,000. And now that same house is over $9 million. So it's, you know, they're fewer and far between. And I don't want to, I think people shouldn't sleep on east of the river. I think there's definitely a lot of good things happening there. And, you know, there's a lot of potential for upside, especially if you're close to one of the metros.
I see you nodding, James. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Like Congress Heights is an area down there that a lot of people don't even know about. And you go down there and the houses are beautiful, they're big, you have a lot of space. And lots of parts of PG, people were, you know, they didn't want to go over there, but now you can get huge lots over there. Riverdale Park, that's been an area that, you know, the arts districts of Hyattsville and Riverdale Park, those are really popular areas. They've been popular for a while, but I think they're really growing now.
What about,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask Cliff, what about in the vacation market? Like, what if you can't afford, you know, a $3 million waterfront home in St. Michael's? Are there any sort of secret spots on the Eastern Shore that are a little more affordable?
There are, but the sweet spot right now in Pollitt County is 1 million to 2.5 million. If you put something on the market, you price it properly, you have multiple offers, and it's gone within a couple days. One thing going back that I think that we should not lose track of, and that is that we've never experienced a pandemic. And the pandemic is making a market by itself. One that most of us, at least I can say this for myself, I've never seen anything like this at any time. And it could change overnight. It could get worse or better. And if I were a buyer, I would be more probably concerned about the pandemic than I would be who's going to be the next president. Frankly, if you went back to January and February and March, people weren't talking politics like we are perhaps now because it's so close to the election. Instead, they were saying, where can we go that is safe? And for example, people from New York who historically, they have a lot of money, they would hop on their own jet or go commercially, fly to the Bahamas or Florida or wherever. That changed dramatically. And people started looking for an area that they could drive to. And from DC, for example, there have been people that thought that this was too far to drive, where certainly they didn't have to fly, but it was too far to drive. New York, the same thing. All of a sudden, that has changed completely because they're saying, you know what, for 2 hours, or from New York 3.5 hours, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be with the family. I'm going to be in the car. And they're not willing to fly commercially, and they're not willing to get on a plane with anybody. So I think that has affected this market more than anything else. And the vacation side of it here is not like it would be in Ocean City, Maryland. Much different. We have some outskirts of beyond St. Michael's, for example, west of St. Michael. There's some really good buys in Tillman Island, Nevitt, Bosman, but the bulk of the people still want to be close to amenities. They want places they can take the kids. They want access to medical facilities. And I don't think that changes no matter where you are.
Okay, bringing it back a little closer to DC, this is a good question. Have you seen a slowdown in neighborhoods like 14th Street due to restaurants being closed? Any of the DC agents want to take that?
I think for us.
Go ahead.
I was going to
say it ties more to whether it's a condo or a house.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, I think it's a slowdown when it comes to houses. I think condos are all facing the same challenges. If you have outdoor space, you're much better positioned. But a lot of restaurants are open and operating and have outdoor seating, and we'll see what happens in the winter. But I just closed with a client on a condo at 14th and Quincy, and they've got 6 or 7 great restaurants right across the street that are all open. So I don't think that's really having too much of an impact right now. It's more just the general issues of the condo market.
Generally, that's the consensus?
Ditto.
Okay. Let's see. Scrolling through the questions here. If Biden wins, will the entry-level staffers boost the Airbnb market? That's interesting. Do you think that there will be a...
So here's the deal with Airbnb. It's illegal to rent one townhouse. So will it boost the basement rentals? Maybe. Or it has to be an accessory dwelling unit in order for it to be a legal Airbnb, or it has to be rented for less than, I forget, 120 days or 180 days a year or something like that. I don't think it's going to boost the Airbnb. It'll boost the regular rental market. I'm looking forward to that because there's a lot of rentals out there that need to get rented.
Here's another good evergreen question. How do you find a good realtor? What question should you ask of the agent to figure this out?
Right here. Just look right here. That's all you got to do.
But if you're shopping for an agent, what would you ask to sort of discern whether they were the real deal or not?
I think it's always great to start with referrals, your friends who recently bought or sold a house, your colleagues, people you trust who have good judgment and had a good experience. And also people who didn't have a good experience will give you some good insights. I think one of the challenges of our business is that people do this so few times in their life that they don't always know what good service is because they don't really have much to compare it to. So having that input from trusted sources is great. And then I would say, even if somebody looks perfect on paper, it's very much a personal services business, and you have to see how you connect and how you work together and whether there's a good rapport. So definitely meet a couple of different 2 or 3 agents and just see who, you vibe with, and ask for references and referrals and look at their portfolio. What have they sold? Are they doing business in the type of segment that you're interested in? But it's entirely, up to you to make sure you're with somebody that you feel has your best interests at heart.
I agree. The personal connection is important. You want to work with somebody who clicks with you and isn't condescending to your questions. We work with a lot of first-time buyers and move-up buyers. And so you want to have someone who's well-versed in the different programs that are available, the different neighborhoods that offer the affordability, but also the lifestyle you're looking for. I think asking for references or checking online reviews is super smart. People who are angry will post things online about people. So check that out, see if someone has a good reputation, and then ask for their past sales. Why not? See what their deal is, see what their brokerage sells. I think that just doing your due diligence is important, and it is something that people don't often do. It's they're like, oh, that person was at this open house, they're nice, I'm going to work with them.
I think it's also really important to have the agent you're talking to really lay out what the procedure is going to be, what the process is going to be, and what the level of interaction is expected to be. I've certainly heard from clients who came to me after having a prior not so great experience saying, I never saw the agent. She just sent me to open houses. We never toured things together. And once I signed the contract, I didn't see her again until settlement. That's not anybody on this panel. We're all full service, highly attentive. You know, you want to make sure that there's a lot about real estate that is not intuitive and that you have no reason to understand some of the ins and outs. Like, why would anybody need to know about title insurance until they need to get title insurance? So having an agent who's your ally, your advocate, and will field all those questions, because again, it's not always something that's going to be self-evident. You're going to have you need somebody to guide you through this, and just make sure you're not going to be handed off to a junior agent or an assistant when the person you're hiring is who you really want to work with.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more here. So let me make sure I pick a good one. Well, this is a little bit of a downer, but it's not I mean, it's an important question to ask. This person says that they've heard rumblings of an imminent housing market crash or correction. Can you advise on what that could look like? So I guess the first question is, have you all heard the same thing? Is there any, you know, is that a real thing that people should be thinking about or feel concerned about right now?
I mean, I always think it's good to be concerned about it. I got into selling in 2004 and saw the market crash, and I have been shell shocked from that. So I'm always expecting the shoe to drop at some point. So I think the number to keep track of is how many people are in mortgage forbearance right now. And that number seems to be improving where people are coming out of forbearance. So I think that's actually like a really good predictor of are people headed to foreclosure? Are people paying their mortgages? What's the scoop on that? The good news is that there's no more predatory loans, and people don't have negative amortization. They don't have interest only loans anymore. And so people have been paying principal down, which means that most people are going to have some sort of equity in the property. So as long as home prices stay relatively stable, I don't think we're going to see a crash like we did in 2008. And so I take solace in that. So I don't think we're going to see this massive crash. Values might go like this, but I don't see an absolute crash because we don't have the mortgage system absolutely imploding.
Yeah, Lindsay, I agree with everything you said, and that was really good info.
Thank you.
And that was I couldn't have said it better myself. And I got into the business in 2000, and from that 2000 to 2007-ish span, a lot of what you saw from a predatory lending standpoint, which we were not one, which is why I'm still sitting here. So it was a lot of interest only loans, as you mentioned, but it wasn't the interest only factor as much as it was stated income loans. A lot of the stated income loans where you had some issues until post crash in 2008, an acronym came out called ATR, which stands for the ability to repay. And having to prove the ability to repay your mortgage seems like that would make sense. You should have always done that. Well, you didn't have to used to. So the ability to repay your loan, and then a lot of people doing 30-year fixed mortgages with rates so low, those consistent payments, they don't deal with something called payment shock. And therefore they keep paying their mortgage. So I don't think if there is a decline or if there is a crash, I don't think it's going to be as a result of mortgage lending with interest rates so low.
I agree with everything that was said. And I would also point out that we learned some amazing lessons from the Great Recession in 2008. That was driven by an implosion of the housing market because of lending issues and sort of super overheated. There was definitely an era of you got to buy something, anything just to get in the market, because it's just going to go up, up, up. And then obviously it didn't. I think here, this is a health crisis, not a housing crisis. And I think housing is going to be one of the things that leads us out of it. I think it's also important to look at where we were going into this and how we recovered from the 2008 recession. Our market was hit, every market across the country was hit, but we were not nearly hit as hard. And it didn't last. The recovery here was much faster because of some inherent factors. One, we have a very strong, robust local economy, a lot of business growth, a lot of job growth. We have a growing population. And of course, we have the federal government that's always helps, and a lot of dollars that the government spends to revitalize the economy. A lot of that ends up staying in this area. We get a little more than our fair share. So we tend to weather these storms better. But the housing market has been really the bright spot in this very challenged economy right now, because every dollar that's spent, you know, when you buy a house, it doesn't end with buying the house. You buy furniture, you hire contractors, landscapers. I mean, you're putting so much energy and money into the economy. It's actually one of the big drivers of our local economy. And it's going to be what I think pulls us out of this. And I think a lot of buyers who are looking for that bigger space right now are hedging their bets against, if we ever have to go back into a lockdown, if this reemerges to the point where everything's locked down again, they want to be positioned in that comfortable home so they can withstand that as well.
James, I know you tried to jump in at the beginning there. Did you have something to add?
Oh, I was just gonna say, you know, when we recommend our lenders, they're gonna, and if you're a first-time home buyer, they're gonna ask you for a lot of documentation. And I get from a lot of my first-time home buyers, I get these things saying, do they really need this? Do they need that? Why do I have to explain this deposit? And part of the reason, you know, I don't think we'll have a crash, or we won't have a crash that's caused by the mortgage industry, is because they're doing all of that up front. So yes, it is required. Yes, it is a little bit painful, but do it, it's worth it. And you know, it's protecting us now.
That's a good note to end on. Thank you guys so much again. And thank you to our audience for joining. I hope you had as much fun as I did. Thank you again to our panelists one more time, Rob Ross from Intercoastal Mortgage, Lindsay Dreyer from City Chic Real Estate, James Kim from McInerney Associates, Cliff Meredith from Meredith Fine Properties, and Nadia Najim from Compass. If any of the audience members still have remaining questions about the market, I know that all of our panelists would be happy to help you, and they are easy to find on Google. And thank you again also to Intercoastal Mortgage and 1331 Maryland for supporting today's event. If you missed any portion of the discussion, if you logged in late or you want to tell your friends about it, you will be able to find a full recap online and a tape of the event at washingtonian.com very soon. And please be sure to follow all of Washingtonian's awesome social media channels to stay in the know about future virtual events like this one. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. Take care. Have a good night.
Stay well.